Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange here on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. My name is Scott Morgan, Roth of Motor City Madmouth, and joining us is CEO Rick Curdy of the Charlotte Bats. And what are you ranting on today, Mr. Curdy?
Well, there's a very popular Brady that kind of made the news, and I'm not talking about Bobby Brady from the Brady Bunch or Peter or Greg Brady. I'm talking about the Brady, Tom Brady, and about his decision about leaving the Patriots, and now it looks like he's going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And a lot of people are saying now the Buccaneers are favorites to win the Super Bowl. They're one of the top to win. I don't see it. I'm sorry. I just don't see it. You got to remember, Tom Brady's 42 years old. And yeah, he was productive, but his numbers have slipped the last 2 years. You know why? Because he's 42 years old. And the Buccaneers, they played better in the second season. I get it. The first season, they were terrible. I know they had Jameis Winston that threw 30 interceptions and all that stuff, but I just don't. I think they're going to improve, and the division is winnable. And yeah, it's a good decision to go to that team because the Raiders got Mariota, Tennessee signed Tannehill. So a lot of things canceled out. So Tampa Bay was a good fit. But to say that they're Super Bowl contenders and they're going to win a Super Bowl on a 42-year-old quarterback whose numbers have declined the last 2 years, I'm sorry, I don't see it. Maybe I'm missing something.
Well, I mean, it's your opinion. I actually think he has a decent chance because of the weapons he has and perhaps some of the ones he's about to get. So it remains to be seen. I knew that he wasn't going to win another one in New England at all because I felt like he was depleted of his weapons. And, at some point or another, it's inevitable that, he was going to go ahead and move on. I mean, he took less money to stay there, and all of a sudden, you run into a situation where I've given you all this here, surround me with some guys, and they continue not to do it, and it became a clash of egos. And I think if he has a puncher's chance, Rick, to win a Super Bowl, it's with Bruce Arians as his coach. As we well know, Bruce Arians went ahead and worked with Ben Roethlisberger. He worked with Carson Palmer, and he also went ahead and he worked with, oh, geez, I'm drawing a blank. We had Carson Palmer, you have Ben Roethlisberger,
Peyton Manning.
and Peyton Manning. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and also with Andrew Luck as well. So he did he's a great coach, and I think that chemistry is going to be really well. I think the bottom line for Tom Brady is that it was show me the money. I've been taking these pay cuts for years and years and years. Apparently, the Patriots just wanted to pay him $12 million a year, which is ridiculous, and he has no weapons. And I think he finally just said, you know what, I'm done. I've accomplished everything I did. No one's going to remember me my last 2 years if I'm a Buccaneer or a Charger or whoever. I mean, look at Joe Namath. He ended his career with the Rams. Nobody cares. John Unitas ended his career with the Chargers. Nobody cares. Emmitt Smith ended his career with the Arizona Cardinals, which was bizarre. Nobody cared. Jerry Rice as a Raider and a Seahawk. Nobody cares. They're going to remember him as a Patriot and a Patriot forever. And I don't blame him for leaving because now Tom is about Tom right now, and it should be about him. It's all about marketing. It's all about the money he's owed, all the pay cuts he gets, and now it's time for him to say, you know what? Now I'm going to do everything. I'm going to do what I can to make myself better. And when I get ready to retire, I got to market myself either as a broadcaster. Maybe I'll get into movies. I don't know what I'll do. Maybe I'll own a football team somewhere down the line. But right now, it's all about Tom Brady, and it's show me the money. And honestly, I don't blame the guy.
Yeah, no, I really don't blame him either, Rick. I mean, at some point or another, when it comes to making such a move like this, Tom had to do it with bets with family. I think it's really a matter of egos. And as we alluded to moments ago, okay, you have Bruce Arians working with Peyton Manning, and you have the Ben Roethlisberger factor in Pittsburgh, and Carson Palmer. So if there's anybody that could go out there and win, I think Tom Brady does have a lot more than we think. And I think anytime a man's on a mission to go ahead and prove somebody wrong that, hey, Bill, you know what? I'm the reason why you won these championships because of my skill set. Thank you for bringing me here. Okay, but in reality, there's that competitive edge between these two people. And as a result, That's why I give him a puncher's chance. It doesn't hurt that I give him a puncher's chance that he has the weapons that he has. We have Chris Godwin as one of his wide receivers, Mike Evans, and a couple of good quality running backs. And, don't be surprised that once they get him into the fold, they're going to accept his input on perhaps some suggestions, I would think.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He's got, probably a lot of total creative freedom now. And, I just think that, it's just time for him to move on. And I think he wants to prove to people that he's sick of hearing that he's the only reason he's there is because of Belichick and because of the system. And if you put him somewhere else, he's not going to be as good. And I think he wants to show people, you can put me anywhere. I don't care. I'm going to succeed wherever I go. And I think he wants to show people that I'm tired of being called this game manager or because Belichick put me in that place or anything like that. I mean, it wasn't like Belichick won a Super Bowl with Drew Bledsoe.
No, but Drew Bledsoe won an important game to get him there, and Drew Bledsoe is also inducted in the New England Patriots Hall of Fame. So they thought a lot of him. It just so happens that Brady played well. He took advantage of his opportunity, and as a result, he stepped down. But your main rant here is you don't think that Brady's going to win a Super Bowl with the Bucs, is it?
No, I don't. I don't see it happening at all. Like I said, he's a 42-year-old quarterback. His numbers have declined. And, it's like, I understand why he went to the Buccaneers because it's a process of elimination because every other team was getting their quarterbacks. And, he wanted to move on. They're going to give him all that money. He'll be there for a couple years. But I just don't see it. I just think, the Bucs are just right now kind of been inconsistent. They played a lot better in the second half despite Jameis's 30 interceptions. And wherever he goes, that'll be interesting. Maybe he'll go to the Chargers some. But I just don't see it happening, and it doesn't matter whether he wins. They can go 0-16. Nobody's going to care because his legacy's already cemented, and good for him for getting all this money. But I just don't see the Bucs doing it. They're going to be better. They'll be in the playoffs. He'll improve them just like Joe Montana improved the Chiefs. But I just don't see them winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and when Peyton won his with the Broncos, he won it with some ugly numbers and a defense that helped him get to that championship. But nevertheless, Peyton Manning does have a Super Bowl ring, and I believe he's the only quarterback in the history of the NFL that has won a Super Bowl in two places.
Yeah, he is, and actually, before the NFL, the only quarterback to have ever won a Super Bowl with two different teams was Norm Van Brocklin. He won one with the Rams, and he won one with the Eagles. But,
right. Well, you're talking championship, but not Super Bowl per se. But yeah, that's it. Right, but yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, Norman Brocklin was a heck of a quarterback in his day. That's for sure. Thanks for bringing that up.
You're welcome. See, I'm good at stats too.
Well, you're trying to pretend to be a journalist even when you rant, so that's okay. I mean, hey, listen. We've understood what your Don Shula always used to go by the fact that you try to make a guy do what he can do and cater to his strengths. And I've come to the conclusion that you definitely are not a journalist from a writer's standpoint, but you make it up in other ways. So I guess it's not really above you to do a little research and come up with a few stats that sound credible once in a while. So that's okay.
I appreciate it.
No, it's okay. That's what it is, Curdy. I mean, hey, you bring it all to the table. I can't wait till we talk about a subject that we have for Tuesday. In fact, we're going to tip our hand a little bit now. But it was just a little teaser here on the network.
Okay.
Rick Curdy gets to talk about Max Kellerman.
Yeah, I'm not going to be so kind about him.
Well, you're not so kind about anybody, but that's beside the point. He's looking to give him a verbal TKO. So, folks, on Tuesday's edition of the Sports Exchange, make sure that you listen to Rick Curdy. We'll make sure he's early. Curdy is early to talk about Max Kellerman.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to give Max some pointers on what to do and what to say when he's on the air.
Yeah, good luck. Okay, because his partner will, with his partner, you need to have that thing called Miracle Ear after you get done watching the guy pretend he's
headphones. I need headphones and I need to turn the volume down because it's just like, oh my God, it's like whatever.
Yeah, as if we need any more health problems beyond the coronavirus. All you need to do is listen to his partner, and then we'll promote Miracle here on the network. That's for sure.
Get him and Michael Irvin together. You're going to need Miracle Eater. Woof.
Yeah, well, you probably need Don King and Bob Arum too, because they could promote that one all day long. So, anything else you want to say about Tom Brady?
No, I wish Tom the best. I'm happy for him. He didn't get all his money. Not that he needed the money, but it'll be really, really strange to see him in another uniform. Just like it was strange to see Peyton as a Bronco or Emmitt Smith as a Cardinal or even Joe Montana as a Chief. It's going to look really, really weird, but, we'll get used to it. And, I hope that'll be great if he wins the Super Bowl. That'd be fantastic. It'll be great if he, lights it up and does really great. But just my personal opinion, he'll improve them. They'll make the playoffs, but a Super Bowl, it ain't going to happen.
Well, look at that division for a moment. Okay, you've got Drew Brees in New Orleans. You have Brady with the Buccaneers. You have Matt Ryan in Atlanta. Of course, now Teddy Bridgewater there. So you're going to have four good starting quarterbacks there as well. So if he didn't need a few other obstacles, that's one of them. But I wish Tom well. Of course, I know where he'll be buying a place. It'll be Clearwater Beach, one of the most beautiful beaches I've ever been to. Believe me, if you've ever been to Clearwater Beach, to me, it's just phenomenal what they've done with the pier and all that. I remember what it was like before it was not even developed. And I have some pretty good friends that still live there, and I like to get there from time to time. So, and not much less the fact that he has no state income tax here in Florida, which everybody in the national media that only talks about the coronavirus, they're at least acknowledging that Florida has no state income tax, or traffic jams just got a little bit busier, and Tom Brady is making his way down to the Sunshine State. Well, I got about a minute to go with you. Go ahead and promote what you want to promote.
Well, you can find me on our website at Charlotte Bats Baseball. We have a petition on there to bring Major League Baseball to Charlotte. We're on Twitter at Charlotte Bats. We have a Facebook page at Charlotte Bats Baseball as well. And if you have any questions or anything you want me to talk about, it don't have to be about baseball, it can be about anything else. Just email me at charlottebatsbaseball@gmail.com, and it's cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com. I will respond, and whether you love me, whether you hate me, it's okay. I will always respond to you.
Yeah, and get your fair share of airtime on the air, because the show would be boring without you on the air anyway. So we got to give you your 10 or 15 minutes of fame talking about, Curdy, you're anything but boring, pal. So, but meanwhile, get ready for Max on Tuesday, because I'll make sure you have a max amount of time to rant on this guy. And don't be surprised if you get...
It is going to be my pleasure to rant about him.
Oh, yeah, I have no doubt about that. All right, Rick Curdy, thanks for hanging with us tonight here on the Sports Exchange. I look forward to bringing you on the program on Tuesday night. Okie doke.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you very much, Rick. Appreciate it. Well, Candy, what's your take on Tom Brady? I know we've talked about it all week, whether he does what he's going to do out in Tampa. But Candy Ebling is my co-host here on the Sports Exchange. What's your take on TB12 playing in Tampa Bay?
It's going to be very different. I mean, I, as a Packer fan, had to get used to when Brett Favre left. I mean, he went to a different team. I think it's something that's going to be very hard for New England fans to stomach. Him coming down here to, Tampa Bay. He did purchase a house down in Greenwich, so he has already purchased a house down here in Florida. I don't know. 12 in a red uniform and not the blue of the Patriots. A lot of the big names, I mean, let's face it, how many players actually only play for one team for a long time? I'm not talking about your players that come and go, that play one team, play a couple seasons and retire, or get injured and retired. But how many actually play their whole career, especially like a quarterback, with one team?
Well, let me, I rarely talk about the NBA, but I will this one time. Karl Malone played most of his career with the Utah Jazz and finished up with the Lakers, and the Detroit Pistons beat the Lakers in the finals. So Karl Malone didn't get a ring with the Jazz, and he didn't get one with the Lakers. And nobody would ever have thought the mailman would ever. But again, no, we've seen a lot of that this week, however. Jason Witten, a lifetime Cowboy. goes over to the Las Vegas Raiders. Philip Rivers obviously is going to the Midwest. Of course, he too bought a place in Florida. You know, and there's a lot of guys that are indeed moving around. And we alluded to Peyton Manning not finishing with the Colts, and the list goes on and on. Of course, Brett Favre, although I shouldn't say that would be fair because the Packers acquired him from the Atlanta Falcons, but he's known for being a Packer. But nobody ever would have thought that he would go to the New York Jets. And we'll ask David Levin about it, our NFL insider, David Levin. And before we get to what you have to say, Candy Ebling and I were talking about guys who didn't finish their careers. And I actually mentioned an NBA analogy, Karl Malone to the Lakers, but we were talking about Philip Rivers to the Indianapolis Colts, Jason Witten, and, of course, Peyton Manning should have stayed in Indianapolis, but that didn't quite work out. Any other names you want to throw in the mix?
Dennis Stone and Tom Brady, obviously.
Well, yeah.
That's what sparked the conversation.
That's what sparked the conversation.
Okay. Baseball, Dale Murphy didn't finish in Atlanta. He finished in Philadelphia and Colorado.
Okay.
Trying to think. That's a good question.
That's why we brought it up.
John Unitas, didn't he finish with the Rams?
No, he finished Chargers, but close enough.
Chargers,
But Joe Namath did go ahead. And
Joe Namath, right.
he finished with the Rams. I believe O.J. Simpson finished with the 49ers, so now we're talking some more NFL.
Willie Mays finished with the Mets.
Right. And don't forget, Hank Aaron landed with the Milwaukee Brewers, too. But then again, when you play for the Milwaukee Braves and then you end up going to the Atlanta Braves, it was a no-brainer to see him wear the Brewers thing. And I actually, when we were out there last week, enjoyed taking a photo next to Hank Aaron's, what was it called, the monument?
It's a Wall of Honor.
Yeah, the Wall of Honor. So it's pretty neat. So.
That's good stuff.
Oh, yeah, isn't it? My goodness, it's really good stuff. And with that said, I have a feeling you have a lot of good stuff.
Well, you're putting the pressure on it.
Oh, I always do, man. Only the strong survive with me, man.
So true.
You know, it's amazing what happens in 2 days' time.
Oh, yeah, isn't it?
We were talking about all of this, and the Jaguars weren't doing anything, and what was going on, and boy, now we have 3 free agents that we signed, and oh yeah, by the way, we traded Nick Foles to the Bears.
Well, we called that one the other night, pal.
Yeah, we did. We called that. We knew something was going to happen.
Yeah, well, you and I are considered amateur prognosticators, although did that one take a lot of sense, knowing that Matt Nagy's the coach there, and once upon a time he was with the Chiefs. So connect the dots.
Okay, first of all, the big Scrabble words, remember, you got to keep it to a low minimum there. I have a Florida education, so we'll keep it at that.
Oh, Scrabble wasn't my game, that's for sure. Chess was mine.
Yeah, well, okay, there you go. I'm not going to, that's on you, Candy. I got nothing else to go by. So let's talk a little bit about the Jaguars before we jump into everything else, because it's been a busy 36 hours, so let's just say that. The Jaguars did finally jump into the free agent pool, and they signed Joe Schobert. Talked about that. They got their cornerback in, I want to pronounce this right, Darquez Denard, who was a cornerback in Cincinnati. And then they went ahead and they got Rodney Gunter, who is they call him a defensive lineman. He's a 3-4 end from Arizona. I get the feeling that he is going to be brought in to possibly play the big right end position. He could play inside, which also lends me to think maybe the Jaguars may shuffle things about, maybe play a little 3-4 defense this year. I'm not saying that they're going to change their base, but you could see it happen. And those were moves that made the team look better on paper. I don't know whether it changes the complete complexity of everything, but it's much better. And then yesterday, while I'm driving around on lunchtime, we get this breaking news story that they traded Nick Foles to Chicago, and I'm like, I wonder if Scott knows. That's exactly what I thought as soon as I heard it.
Well, I'm glad you were thinking about me. Nothing gets past me there at 11.
I'm serious. It was, but they kind of chuckled about it on the radio. It was almost like, oh, it finally happened. And I know that if you've seen the social media today, and actually a lot of it yesterday too, this city's happy about it. The majority of the city's happy about it. Not because I said this to everybody I've talked to today. Nick Foles is a good guy, upstanding guy, great family man, has his priorities in order. You know, it's something that didn't work out, and it's going to go down as one of the worst deals the Jaguars ever made in free agency because of the contract and what they had to give up to get rid of him. But he's a good guy, and I like him. And you have to separate who the person is and who the athlete is. So he goes to Chicago. The Jaguars get a 4th-round draft pick in return, which is insanely great. They have to pay, I think it's $18.75 million of his contract for this year, which is basically, he's on the books for 1 year. Chicago picks up the rest. The Jaguars are $4 million ahead of the deal. They got a 4th-round pick in it, and now they don't have to deal with the headache of the next 3 years of what to do with his contract. To me, that's a win.
Well, yeah, I mean, they were out. They obviously had a contract that they probably wish they didn't go ahead and take on, and as a result, the Bears are desperate to push Mitchell Trubisky, and they found a guy that they're familiar with a coach. I think the one thing you're seeing during this free agent frenzy, if I may say it loosely, is you're finding a lot of coaches landing players that they've worked with before because of the inability to bring them in and interview them. So it's more of a comfort free agency period with coaches trying to match up with players. And I think that definitely occurred with this transaction of Foles going to the Bears. So, it makes sense. I mean, Jacksonville got out of it. So I guess the only thing that leads me to ask you is now that Foles is out of there, who are they going to turn to as their backup quarterback?
Oh, you want to lead this, don't you? You're dangling the carrot, aren't you?
Oh, no, you bet, man. I got somebody that laughed at me the other day about this particular carrot.
By the way, Candy, just so you know,
Yes.
the carrot is in front of my face as well, because I said it first.
No, I said it first to her.
Oh, no. Okay, sorry, go for that. I know, it's like two kids fighting on a schoolyard. Let me say this.
Oh,
I had discussed this here in town.
Okay, I discussed it out of town.
I will say that it has been discussed by other people. I will not name names, but now it's not mentioned. Okay, so Scott and I seem to think that Blake Bortles may come back to Jacksonville.
No.
And
No.
we know that your feeling about this. And it actually to me it makes sense. And I know that when people here in Jacksonville hear this, I'm going to get ridiculed to high hell for it. But it makes sense. And here's why. And I'm hoping Scott is grinning right now. Please tell me he is.
He does, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, fine.
I don't smile much, but this one's pretty wide.
Like a Cheshire cat. Okay, so here's the thing. I told Scott in pre-production, I would have liked to see Chad Henne come back. Well, Henne signed his contract today with Kansas City. He's not going anywhere.
Right.
It's a good move for him. From a building standpoint, you want somebody like Henne who's going to actually teach Minshew. Bortles isn't going to teach Minshew. But what Bortles does do is he brings athleticism and the ability to run. He knows part of the offense.
Yeah, but he doesn't know how to win.
I don't know. He won 2 games to get into the AFC Championship game. I mean, obviously. Well, no. I mean, she mentioned something. I'm mentioning that he did go ahead and take him within a few minutes to the Super Bowl.
He's right. I'm gonna. Although I love you to death, Candy, I'm gonna side with him tonight. I think Bortles is great only because there's no pressure.
David,
I know it sounds weird.
David, I used to like you.
Yeah, I know. Well, for some reason, I have a Guns N' Roses song in my head. I used to love her, but then I had to kill her.
Well, it sounds like to me Candy's using the guns part of the roses here on you.
No kidding. But anyway, here's the thing, and this was brought up on the radio back him up, he's not a polished product. He's still learning.
Correct.
And do you bring somebody in who's established to possibly take over and end Minshew mania, similar to Tannehill and Mariota, or another quarterback who's come in, Dan Marino and David Woodley, which was beautiful back then. But you get the sense that Minshew has to be the guy. And maybe Blake comes back for a 2-year, let's say $10 million contract. And I'm just throwing money at you.
That's fine.
Isn't that nice? I can just throw millions at you. But anyway, so
I'd like to see the green stuff. Bring it on.
Yeah, I know. I got it. But he knows the situation. He knows the organization. Above everything else, Blake Bortles was Dave Caldwell's guy. And, Caldwell's still standing after the Bortles fiasco. And I call it a fiasco because Coughlin is the one that offered him the contract extension, not Caldwell. So they're doing everything they can to move away from the Tom Coughlin era, and you can see it in what they're doing with the players they're picking, the decisions they're making to release players, and the overall. Let's get back to making this a younger football team that we can build. Maybe it isn't. We know now for sure it's a rebuild. It's not a win now mode.
Right.
Especially since they average now 25.12 years per person on their roster. I mean, you can't win with that. By the way, I did some research tonight. You should be impressed with the numbers because I'm not good at that. But anyway,
that's all right.
I think Blake Bortles will be a great addition. I don't know how the fans will feel about it, but they also know he's not going to start. He's not going to go into camp and beat Gardner Minshew out.
I mean, well, what are your other options, man? You got Matt Moore, who would certainly be a capable possibility, and would Jameis Winston or Cam Newton be prepared to back up Minshew, knowing? Well, hear me out. Would they, if they couldn't get a job, knowing that one injury, David, knocks you out, you're starting again? I mean, I agree with you. I can't see Winston or Cam Newton there.
In that case, because he's now on the market.
Right.
Go get Andy Dalton.
Yeah, but I still think he's going to end up with the Patriots. I really do.
Well, I'm saying for right now, he's not. Go get Andy Dalton.
Why does Dave Caldwell move that quick?
I know he won't.
Exactly.
He won't because you have to let. Remember we talked about this about 6 weeks ago that I said I thought Andy Dalton had a chance to be there with the Jaguars because I thought they would move away from Foles. I don't think he moves as quickly though because you kind of have to let. It's like the high school quarterback. You gotta let him have his moment.
Right.
He's now the starter, and he's the undisputed starter. He was the starter of this team, and he was the quarterback of this team the moment he walked on the field on the 11th play of week 1. And you and I saw it, Candy saw it, everybody saw it. And then Foles came back, and they all still, were gung-ho about Minshew mania. We saw how bad Foles was. Minshew comes back and rallies the troops, and they get 6 wins. And there was no way on God's green earth they were going to be able to keep Bosa Bowman. You and I talked about this earlier. I don't care what they say behind closed doors and how great relationship is and whatnot. Because it probably was good, but I don't see them both being able to be there.
Well, let me tell you this, David. On the Motorman and Rude Dog show, which preceded the Sports Exchange today, we did actually talk about some of the Jaguars, and I told Rudy that, hey, listen, Gardner Minshew went out there and beat out Nick Foles. He really did. So when I told him, I think I mentioned something about Bortles, but when you think about the reality that, they're trying to clean up from that Tom Coughlin debacle is what they're trying to do. Bortles makes more sense than one would think. And Gardner Minshew, they were high on him at the draft when they acquired him last year. Was he like 200, I think, or 199?
He was like 190, 196.
Right, so he was...
You saw the elation in the draft room.
Oh, yeah, I did. I saw it myself.
All of us media guys were thinking, oh, God, he's one of us. It's amazing.
Right. Well, the thing that people have to understand, and that they'll get a bigger dose of it this year, is the fact that Gardner Minshew learned under Mike Leach, and I think Mike Leach knows a lot about offense.
Right.
So he didn't come to the Jaguars stupid without any offensive skills. He didn't.
How about this? This is a better testament. Yes, he learned under Mike Leach, and I love Mike Leach. For a while, I wanted Mike Leach to get the FSU job.
Right.
Because I thought that would have been a great fit.
Would have been an interesting fit.
Nick Saban wanted him to come for 1 year. If that's not a testament to how good this kid can be, then I don't know what is. Because if Nick Saban knows he's only getting you for 1 year, you're a grad student, and you don't know, he doesn't know exactly how much he's going to get out of you, but he wants you there to start. That tells you something. That meant he would have jumped over Tua. That tells you something.
Right.
He's the goods.
Right. I agree.
That's one of the greatest.
Do you think?
When you ask for references, on a resume, there's your reference.
Well, yeah, Nick Saban, I know he was headed to Alabama before Mike Leach said you can play right now. Then boom, all of a sudden, Minshew says, maybe the Apple State isn't such a bad state after all.
Yeah.
All right, what do you want to add, Candy?
So what would you think of, like, do you think Jacoby Brissett's going to go back to the Patriots?
No, this is what I think happens, and now we'll talk a little more NFL broad, because
okay.
I can talk the Jaguars. I want to circle back around for a second to what you said. Who else comes in? And besides Bortles, I could see Jameis Winston here, and I know that's a very unpopular choice for a guy who threw 30 interceptions and stood in front of the media and said, "I'm just balling, man. Everybody else has a ball with me," which may have come down as one of the dumbest comments a quarterback ever makes.
Right.
Never said Jameis Winston was the smartest guy in the world, but he's a good athlete. He's a quarterback. And just like Tannehill in Tennessee, a change of scenery helps Jameis Winston more than it helps Cam Newton. I really believe that. And you're right. Gardner Minshew is one injury away from being on the sideline having to start Josh Dobbs right now.
Right.
That's just scary everybody. I know Josh Dobbs, by the way, great guy. I like him, but we don't know what he can do on the field. Jameis Winston gets in the game, and they start to win. They start to roll, and there's 30 touchdowns, and those 30 interceptions turn into 24 and 10. And he's a baller, and he's a player. I don't know what kind of guy he is in the locker room. I only know from what I know from Florida State. I could see it happening, but his price tag is way too high.
For now.
He'd have to.
For now.
Right, for now. He's got to learn some humility and realize, hey, I'm not as good as I think I am.
Well, he'll learn that pretty quick. He will.
Right.
I mean, he's playing off of I-75 in Tampa. I'm sure that he knows the road back to Florida State goes through I-10 when you go from Tallahassee to Jacksonville. So my gut feeling is, of all these quarterbacks out there, and bear in mind, Joe Flacco was released by the Broncos.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I told Rudy today that he was asking me for Jeff Driscoll. What does he think about in the Rocky Mountains? I said, you know what, Rudy, I'm not endorsing this one. I mean, he was 0-3 with the Lions, and I saw nothing, and the Lions were 0-8 with their backup quarterback under Matt Stafford. So, Jeff Driscoll, glad to have you out in Mile High City. You weren't good in the Motor City. But, I don't know. I mean, I'm not so sure that Jameis Winston to Jacksonville is that far off once his price tag comes down. Unless New England goes out there and Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick need Grecian formula to save the amount of gray hair that they're going to get dealing with this guy. But I think they're more disciplined that they won't let Winston get out of control like a lot of the other coaches. Because he went to, through 3 or 4 coaches in Tampa? I think Dirk Ketter was one of them. Obviously was working with Bruce.
Mike Smith.
Lovie Smith.
No.
Well, Lovie Smith began.
Yeah, Mike Smith was a defensive coordinator.
Right, that's okay.
Candy.
Yep.
Would you have a problem with Jacoby Brissett being in Jacksonville as a backup?
Not as much as I would Blake Bortles.
She's not backing off, David. She thinks we're a bunch of clowns.
Well,
Yeah.
You're going to need to go buy her a steak dinner after this because, dude, she's hurting tonight.
No, she was.
I'll only be hurting if they do go back to Blake Bortles.
Yeah, she was steadfast about it when we had dinner yesterday.
What do you want to see here, though?
Not Bortles. He just.
Not
Okay, but
Bortles.
I will say this real quick. One of my writers who I work with over at Black and Teal, Cassie Clark, for every time I praised Blake Bortles for something he did right, she could find 5 things he did wrong. And I love her to death and whatnot, but she even the teeter totter was balanced. You're beginning to be like that.
I guess if the shoe fits, I gotta wear it.
Yeah, but you're not convincing her on Bortles. When I brought it out there, it was. I've learned in this business, especially being around the NFL as long as I have, that you go with your gut feeling and your instincts, and that's why Bortles came to my mind. You're a beat writer. You certainly know that. With all due respect to Candy, though, over the last 7 years, she's hung around me, and she's been in the sports world like she's never ever visualized, and being raised in a very nice all-American family up in Wisconsin, only to deal with an off-the-wall clown motor mouth like I am. So she's definitely seeing a very interesting thing. For a woman that never attended an opening day game in Milwaukee and attended her first opening day game in Miami when the Tigers took on the Marlins. We're talking about somebody here that, I don't know, man. She knows a lot about her thing, but...
Blake Bortles is status...
You have now corrupted her.
Blake Bortles is status quo, doesn't know how to win, doesn't know how to... He doesn't have it. And if you don't have it, how can you teach it? And how can you... because that's what you also want the guy to do for Minshew. Because Minshew has such passion, such energy...
And I'll give you that. I will give you that. I know Scott can attest to it some from being at the games 2 years ago as opposed to now. I can tell you on the daily, the passion in the locker room just in practice from when Minshew is in the locker room as opposed to Blake Bortles is night and day.
Yep.
It is different than, I've been around sports, college and football, not as long as you guys have because I've done other things. But you know that you know who the leader is, and you know what your teammates think of you, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, whatever. There's so much energy from this, this 80s, mystique machismo guy that, we all wanted to be in high school. And it's just infectious. I think the Bortles thing can happen. I don't know if it does. How about that? I know that it would make for interesting fodder because people will be, let's say that Minshew screws up in week 5, and he really screws up, and it becomes a trend, and they say, oh, are we going to go back to Bortles, or are we going to keep Minshew in there because there's the hook? Because if Bortles can't deliver, then this whole experiment's just.
Well, here let's not lose sight of this fact, David. Okay. Minshew is a charismatic country boy that's playing in a very ideal town for him. Blake Bortles is a very straightforward quarterback, okay, not flashy, but yet does have some mobility. And you saw Foles go away. That didn't work out. So I guess that leads me to my next question, okay. I do think they're going to have to get a veteran, and I don't think Winston is as far-fetched as we might think. But do you see the Jaguars definitely drafting a quarterback very high in the draft?
I don't know if it's high, but I will tell you, I'm glad you segued to this because this was talked about a lot today. The Jaguars have 12 draft picks, and they could have more if rumors are true about the fact that the Jets or the Eagles or the Seattle Seahawks are interested in Yannick Ngakoue.
Okay.
Which means Philadelphia would more than likely be willing to give up either a first and nothing else or Nelson Aguilar and a second-round pick. Seattle would give up their 26th pick in the draft. I don't know what the Jets would give up because it's way too high. I'm assuming maybe in next year's first-round pick or 2 second-round picks or whatever it is. The Jaguars have a ton of draft capital. 12 picks this year, 11 picks next year. It's insane. And if they can't get better with players in the next 4 years, then go ahead and move the team to London. And I'm saying that now. Yeah, you got me on tape for that.
Yeah, well,
I don't know. But how about this? You're at number 9. You get your defensive lineman, whether it's Derek Brown, Savon Kinlaw. Maybe you surprise move into safety because you've got your middle linebacker and your linebacker issues taken care of. And then number 20, I don't know. Justin Herbert is still there. And for some reason, he's falling. Jordan Love of Utah State is taken ahead of him. And now, Herbert's the guy in the green room who is sitting there looking like Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
And at number 20, the Jaguars decide, you know what? We're taking him because we don't know what our future's going to hold because we want insurance. You move up to 15.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You have capital that you can use. They could. If somebody slips to the second round that they like, I could see it happening. I don't know. I know that there's 4 quarterbacks on that list, and then there's separation. There's somebody like a Jake Fromm, if he doesn't go to New England and he falls in the second round, the Jaguars think maybe he's the guy of the future. But I don't think he fits their system. But I could see the Jaguars. The kid from Washington State who replaced Minshew, who had astronomical numbers last year. He may be available in round 4, and we have 3 4th-round draft picks. It's worth taking a shot.
Yeah, well, I think the reality of the situation is this. Okay, you're not sure if you're going to draft another quarterback and when. Meanwhile, you did have a pretty good return in the Jalen Ramsey trade, so you better start cashing in those chips, and you better not look too bad doing it. And we can't forget, and we've talked about this again, and we'll continue to talk about it, is this. David Caldwell and Doug Marrone, right, okay, is this their final year? Is it win or else?
Can we discuss this real quick?
Yeah, sure, we can get to that. We should.
Okay, let's just go ahead and talk about this. Because they are not in a win now mode, and because they have decided that they're going to do this youth movement with the players that they have traded away, they're going to play out the rest of their contract. They are under contract through 2021.
Okay.
I don't see any way now, and I've given this a lot of thought. I know this is a 180 turn for me. There is no way that Shad Khan is going to turn the reins over to a new head coach for 2021 when they've seen Dave Caldwell basically tear the roster down and try to build it back up in a better formula. At least I'm hoping this is a better formula than the one that Coughlin's had the last 2 years.
Right.
I'm gonna say, and it's been a talk here in town, so I'm not the only one that's been saying it.
Well, you're there. I'm not. So you're my eyes over there.
It's a good bit, right? It's a good bet that Shad knows that he's going to have a hard time getting a head coach in here. After 1 year of basically taking a roster and having to deal with it. It's like taking It's like Barry Switzer winning with Jimmy Johnson's players.
Okay.
To a lesser extent because they weren't as good.
Yeah, that's a lesser extent, all right.
Right, it's a lesser extent, right. But I now believe that he's going to give them both to the end of the contracts to build this. Because if they win, let's say it gets crazy and they win 7 games in 20, which could happen. I mean, who knows? They do right in the draft, and these free agents hit, and players come back from injury, and things start to fall into place, and they win 7 games. Khan would be crazy to let these guys go, knowing that at least the fan base sees progress. It's like starting over again, and these fans keep on getting knocked down, and at some point, I'm hoping that Shad realizes he's the one that's hurting the fans right now. It's not Marrone. It's not Caldwell. They're trying to build something. Shad's comments about fan support and putting stress on them and moving to London and all this. Can we just have a season where we see progress and we move forward?
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, we got about.
Like David Caldwell has looked really good this week, and I want to get that in real quick.
Okay.
The moves he's made in free agency and the trade for Foles and moving forward, he's looked really good this week.
Well, I mean, he looked bad when he traded Ramsey for that return, but now the question is with Dave Caldwell, well, what are those picks going to turn into? Yeah, I mean, you eliminated a mistake you made by bringing in Nick Foles but you only got a fourth-round pick, a compensatory one, I might add. But for a movie you probably shouldn't have made, but they felt they were that close, and well, not so fast. So no, I'm with you. I guess it's, you can look at it a lot of different ways. They're only playing 6 home games in Jacksonville, so they're going to make money off those 2 London games when and if the season does get started. So, as far as I'm concerned, yeah, I guess you can see him go till 2021, but I don't know. It's pretty hard to say when you have so much addition and subtraction. You don't know what you're getting rid of. I mean, everybody knows it's the ultimate Rubik's Cube.
Right.
But we'll know soon enough.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
The Rubik's Cube is a perfect analogy. But
Yeah.
I do believe that if you've got that many draft picks and you're moving towards the future, and you get rid of that albatross that's around your neck, which is a quarterback's contract, you're moving in the right direction. I don't like all the moves he made, but he's moving in the right direction.
All right, well, you got about a minute or so to let people know where to find you. Go ahead, David.
Okay, well, thanks. I'm on Fansided on Black and Teal and Marlin Maniac. I write football and baseball and a little bit of everything in between. On Twitter, I can be found at DM719907. And I'm here with you guys on Tuesday and Thursday nights.
You got it. And, of course, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk when you do get that going at some point down the road.
Thanks, David.
God, I am praying. I miss baseball.
I do,
really
too.
Miss baseball.
David, I still like you even if you want Blake Bortles back.
It's okay, Candy. I love you too. Just don't tell Scott, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'll just pretend that I need the miracle ear with all the shouting that Stephen A. Smith does go ahead and have. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, I know, but that'll be for another day. Hey, but anyway, so we got Bill Winters coming, so we'll appreciate the time.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, we welcome our former New York Giant, Bill Winters, to the program. And Bill, thanks for being on the Sports Exchange. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great, Scott. How about yourself?
Well, we're doing fine, thanks.
Hi, Bill.
And Candy's
Hey,
in the
Candy,
house.
how are you?
The boss is here
Good,
with me.
good.
So she has to say, chill, Scott, then you'll be laughing all the way from here all the way to Timbuktu. So anyways, how you doing? Yeah, she does have to say that a lot, too, I might add. But at any rate, we're going to probably turn you into what? Adam Schefter, since you want to talk about a million trades, right? Or
Yeah.
transactions?
Yeah, there's a lot of action today.
Yeah. Well, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, we'll start with the Cardinals, Arizona Cardinals. They signed linebacker Devondre Campbell, and he's coming from the Falcons. He led the Falcons in tackles last season with 129 and had a pair of sacks and a couple of interceptions and a couple of forced fumbles. So he's joining your boy Devon Kennard from the Lions as a recent Cardinal signing, and together the two make for a revamped group of linebackers that should really help Arizona's defense. So that was an outstanding signing for them. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think the Cardinals have done real well this week, knowing that they landed DeAndre Hopkins as well, Bill.
Yeah, it looks good on paper. We'll see how they put it together on the field.
Right.
Yeah, it looks good now. They're looking at the defense, and you got the draft coming up. So,
Yeah.
Scott sure looks that way.
Yeah. Okay.
We got the Cleveland Browns. We've talked about the Browns in the past. They have to get stronger up the middle on defense and also on the offensive line. So Mayfield doesn't have to compensate so much. So they signed defensive tackle Andrew Billings, and Andrew Billings was one of Cincinnati's most reliable interior linemen in the last few years. He had 35 tackles and 4 tackles for loss and 14 starts last season. So the Browns have filled their need to add some beef on the defensive line, and Billings does that. It's also more of a one-year prove-it deal. All right, so they probably looking at producing and then signing a long-term deal if they can continue to be the most reliable interior lineman for the Browns, just like he did with the Bengals.
Okay. Next one.
All right, Detroit. This was huge. Detroit trades quarterback Darius Slay to the Eagles for a 223rd round pick and a 5th round pick. And I guess the Lions decided to move on from Slay. Despite the fact that he was their top defensive back, Philadelphia is, Detroit lost. Philadelphia's gain. The Eagles' biggest weakness in 2009 was an injury-depleted secondary that allowed quarterbacks to throw against them, pretty much without impunity. So Slade comes in and plugs that drain, and he gets an unexpected extension of $50 million. That's the biggest salary ever for a cornerback, so that he doesn't plug in cheaply. And also, Detroit signed Desmond Trufant early in free agency and brought in Deron Armand to make place in the safety, which we talked about last night. They're basically going to have a superstar on each level. The Eagles are going to do a good job in plugging that in. So the Lions are smart enough to get some value back for letting Slay go for a player they had no intentions of extending.
Let me point out a couple things that just came across my wire. Number one, Darius Slay went out there and ripped Matt Patricia. So you might want to read up on that. There was no love lost between those. And I think another thing that helps the Eagles benefit from the Slay movement to the city of brotherly love is that Jim Schwartz initially drafted him, and now he's reunited with him as defensive coordinator for the Eagles. So just a little side notes there for you, Billy.
Yeah, that's probably why they gave him $50 million. Right. Schwartz knows what he has with that player, and he went out and got him.
Yeah, he did.
A lot of times it's who you know and who you played for. I had that experience when I played in the USFL. My coach went from San Antonio to Portland, Mike Barry, and he traded for me. And it was great to be able to play for someone who thought enough of you to trade for you.
Yeah, but I'll tell you one thing, though. Slade did have some heavy-duty words for Matt Patricia. And when you and I have talked about this time and time all week, Bill, this is a win or else for Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia. And I'll tell you what, Slade's not doing anything to help the Lions get free agents. And again, they're taking all Patriots' butts. The Lions were supposed to have made an upgrade with Patricia. They let Jim Caldwell go, and now the organization has regressed badly. So continue on.
Well, we'll see. We had this discussion the other night. I just think that, Slay wanted to get paid. Philadelphia, they've had a track record of going out and paying a lot of money for defensive backs. That's been their MO for a long, long time. And I just think Detroit decided they weren't going to pay that kind of money regardless of how good the player was. It's sort of like the DeAndre Hopkins syndrome. And, we're seeing this in other areas, too, where, guys are, their best player on their team, and it's time to get paid, and they're just making a decision that they want to maybe build depth and not pay that kind of money. And I know that they'll find a team that will.
Well,
DeAndre Hopkins with the Cards and Slay with the Eagles, and, there'll probably be a few more like that.
Yeah, with all due respect, Bill, though, I will say this. Matt Patricia was brought in because for his defensive being a good, solid defensive coordinator, and the Lions' defense the last couple of years has looked awful. That really has. So,
they strengthened it with those three trades.
Right.
They got a good safety, they got a good linebacker, and they got a good defensive tackle in Shelton, and they're doing the same thing that the Patriots have done. In fact, the Patriots got rid of a lot of players.
Right.
They're probably going to go down to Tampa Bay.
Yeah, they will.
So a lot of it's who you know and how much you're making, and you can't, like I said before, it's very rare that, some guys have so much leverage that they're able to pull off a contract of that size.
True. No, I understand. Again, Patricia and Quinn have another year. If they can get it right during the offseason, both through the draft as well as in free agency, more power to them. And let's not lose sight of the fact the Lions have the third overall pick. So, it'll be very interesting to see what they do with that high pick. So we'll see. Continue on, though.
Here's another one with the Rams, defensive tackle Sean Robinson. The Rams are bringing in Robinson to a 2-year, $17 million deal, which is a lot for a role player. But the Rams hope he can be more than someone who plays half the snaps. It makes a lot of sense to do that deal. Robinson had a bit of a downturn last year, but he's joining a very talented defensive line. It's depth on the defensive line. The past 2 years they haven't given a lot of confidence in him. But the Rams, they like him, and they went out and got him.
Okay.
The next one is the Browns revamping their defense as well. The Browns signed safety Carl Joseph, and Joseph is a former first-round pick who became a reliable starter for the Raiders over the years. He was injured much of last season, and the Raiders declined his fifth-year option. So the Browns are in need of multiple safeties this offseason, and Joseph can immediately step in and be their starter. It's a one-year deal, but if he plays as well as they hope, it would be easy to see them give him a big extension. So they're getting a value pick here, and we'll see what he does next year. And, you could see the same syndrome when he goes to ask for big money next year. They're not going to sign him. So a lot of these players are short-term deals and put up or shut up.
Right.
So this is a great opportunity for the Browns to get a great safety that was a former first-round pick. He's coming off an injury. So, we'll see.
The bargain basement that you hope that'll work out.
Well, yeah, it's all shopping for value these days. They
don't
want to overpay anymore.
That's true.
Remember we talked about this the other day. We're going to 17 games. They got to pay overseas, and I just think that there's a premium on 2-for-1 type. I would call it 2-for-1, getting two players for the price of one to build depth. And it's just that's just my personal opinion. I think Detroit's doing that. I think the Texans are doing that. I think some other teams are going to go that way as well, because they're just going to restructure the way they structure contracts.
Right.
In the future.
All right.
Go ahead.
No, that's all right. Next one. Go ahead. I'm following your lead here, Bill.
Okay, the next to the Vikings. They signed defensive tackle Michael Pierce. Pierce is just 27 years of age, but he's one of the league's top run stuffers. Joining the league as an undrafted free agent in 2016. So he's going to be a great fit on Minnesota's already stellar defense, which has had some issues stopping the run last season, notably in the playoffs, and particularly against the 49ers. So that was a good move for them. And he's probably, they're not paying a fortune for him as well. And then the Lions signed Desmond Trufant. He was a surprise to the Falcons. It's a surprise the Falcons let Trufant go. He spent, all 7 seasons of his career with the Falcons. There were injuries last season, but he still grabbed 4 interceptions. He's a playmaker, and the Lions got a good one. So, that's a good deal for them. The Panthers signed guard John Miller. Miller is just nothing more than a cap casualty by the Bengals, and their loss is Carolina's gain. He's not the best guard in the league, but he's very consistent and should show up the team's line after they traded away Trey Tanner.
Okay, continue
Next
on.
One.
Yeah.
The Seahawks. The Seahawks are signing offensive tackle Cedric Ogbuhui. Ogbuhui is a former first-round pick who hasn't quite played up to his expectations. He signed a deal close to the veteran minimum last season. The Seahawks are giving him a lot more, $3.3 million over 1 year. That means they see something in him, and they likely will have him serving as a prominent role, particularly at swing tackle. Still, there's not a ton of good tape on him, so Seattle may have overpaid on this one. We'll continue with Seattle. They went out and got edge rusher Bruce Irvin. Irvin is a productive edge rusher who could feel right in at home in Seattle, his former team. He amassed 8.5 sacks last season and should bolster a line that likely, that lost Jadeveon Clowney. And, what I see here is that's Clowney's replacement. Clowney had 3 sacks last year. Clowney wants $20 million. He can go out and get more, as good a production or a better production with an edge rusher by the name of Bruce Irvin. Okay? So I think Seattle sees something in him, and again, that goes to the theory of value rather than overpaying these days. Okay? The Cardinals signed linebacker Devon Kennard. Kennard wasn't on the open market for long after being released by the Lions. He was the team captain and had 7 sacks in each of the past 2 seasons. So he's a great 3-year pickup for the Cardinals. So you can see the Cardinals are being a little contrarian here because they're going out and signing these players that are older that want big paychecks. Okay, and they've got DeAndre Hopkins, and they got this linebacker Kennard, and the Lions just decided they weren't going to pay him.
Right.
All right. So the Cardinals are kind of going against that. So we'll see whose theory works the best. The Chargers signed quarterback Chris Harris Jr. Still has a lot to offer virtually on secondary in the league. He's getting up there in years, but he may not have high-level ones left. But he's still a great player from last year, and the Chargers expect more of the same this time around. So, that's a short-term grade of an A as far as I'm concerned. Now, Broncos, in addition to them getting rid of Joe Flacco, where they're restructuring their salaries, they re-signed nose tackle Mike Purcell, one of the most underrated nose tackles in the league. Purcell's a force against the run, and in fact, the Broncos are able to keep him on a second-round tender is a pretty big deal. So they got a real good value there. There's a premium on defensive linemen and offensive linemen. So when you can get a guy like that, with not having to pay through the nose for it, that helps you put that on your defense. Okay, here's my boy, the Raiders, quarterback Eli Apple. Remember, I believe he started out as the original high-round draft choice for the New York Giants.
Right.
He never worked out.
Right.
Then he went to the Raiders. Then he went to the Vikings. He went to the Saints. Then he went to the Raiders. All right, and that's where he is now. Despite Apple having a troubled start to his career with the Giants and having some key lapses in coverage with the Saints, in the back end of last year, he's still a reliable corner. Apple was a solid in coverage for much of last season, and she shored up the Raiders' secondary in need of help, provided they didn't overpay. Apple only improves the young core the Raiders have in the secondary. All right, so Mayock must think the world of Eli. All right, as his former number one pick. All right, and then we got the Falcons signing edge rusher Dante Fowler Jr. Fowler had his best season as a pro last year with the Rams, and he's feeding off the chaos Aaron Donald brought to the middle of the line, for a career-high 11.5 sacks. While his quarterback numbers suggest he may not hit double digits again, he may be tasked with punching up a Falcons defense in desperate need of athletes who can create havoc plays and slow opponents. We'll see if he's going to be a force alongside a less effective sorting cast. But he's getting paid like he's going to. Okay. The Rams signed linebacker Leonard Floyd. Okay, they didn't. The running back Gurley. They didn't redo him. Let him go, so they saved themselves $7 million. And some of that money went to linebacker Leonard Floyd. He's going to quickly fill in the void left by Fowler's departure. Floyd won't be the kind of sack numbers his predecessor will, but the former Bear only had 4 fewer quarterback hits despite making only 3 sacks last season. So he can improve thanks to Donald's presence. But if he wasn't able to keep his role in Chicago while cleaning up Khalil Mack's messes, he may underwhelm in a similar role with the Rams. So the jury's still out on what kind of player he's going to be next to Aaron Donald. But these guys watch a lot of tape. All right, so they probably got a good value picking him.
Okay.
Let's see. We've got the Jets re-signed quarterback Brian Poole. The Jets got a pleasant surprise in him last year in the secondary. He's a rising young corner who played better with the Jets than he had in the previous 3 seasons with the Falcons. He may not have the high ceiling other defensive backs on this year's market, but he's a steady starter and the kind of player needed to spur a turnaround in Jet territory. He's back with New York on a low-risk 1-year, $5 million deal. Okay, and then the Chargers have signed defensive tackle Linval Joseph. He was Minnesota's brief stop in salary cap hell last year. It meant the club was going to have to make some tough cuts this offseason. That meant Joseph and his $12.8 million cap hit had to go despite a typically solid season up front. The Vikings' loss is the Chargers' gain, as he now is the man at the center of LA's line and to clog up the running lanes in the AFC. So those are, there's a couple other picks that I thought were pretty good. The Saints re-signed Malcolm Jenkins. Jenkins returns to the Saints, where, he started his career after being released by the Eagles. He's a heavy veteran and a savvy player, and his style of play is unlikely to decline, even though he's in his early 30s. So he should be an upgrade over Von Bell, who's currently a free agent. So, we could go on a little bit.
Well, I'll go over a few. Let me go over a few of the other ones we talked about in pre-production.
Sure.
You talked about Ted Karras with the Miami Dolphins. Explain that one.
I was just going to talk about that one.
Okay, go ahead. Well, you tell me.
All right, yeah, that was my next one up, Scott.
That's all right.
The Dolphins signed offensive line Ted Karras. Karras was a solid player after being pressed into a starting role in the 2019 season, thanks to David Andrews' blood clots. That led him to prove a deal in Miami. He got 1 year and $4 million. If he can maintain his level of play outside of New England, he'll be a bargain for the Dolphins. And he set himself up for a bigger and long-term deal next season. So you can see what the Dolphins are doing. Everybody, got upset with them last year because they did a lot of salary dumping. They thought everybody was tanking, and they finished 5-4.
Right.
I'm a big believer in Fitzpatrick as a quarterback. Okay, but they're going out and getting some good linemen that have some things to prove, where they're not paying a ton of money, all right, for him. And then there's a real good chance next year that if he does a really good job for the Dolphins, but and he turns around and asks for the house, they're going to tell him the same thing that the other teams have told players like Hopkins. We're not going to pay you that, but he might wind up getting $8 or $9 million a year, and that's pretty darn good for a lineman.
Well, I'll tell you what, the Miami Dolphins, Bill, have really. I'll tell you, I hate to say they fooled anybody, but last year when everybody thought they were tanking for Tua, which I think would have been stupid anyways, I don't think much of Tua. But, you're right. They stockpiled draft choices, and now they're proving that they're going to spend some money. Will look like a 5-year rebuild because they gave Brian Flores, the head coach, a 5-year deal, Bill. And, he did pretty respectable, with that 5-11 mark. The ceiling for the Dolphins in the next year or two, they're going to be a powerhouse in the AFC East. I really believe that.
Good evaluators of talent.
Yeah.
And they basically have what I consider to be a really structured team as far as the players' salaries. I'll tell you, one of the things that I picked up on a long time ago when I was watching Hard Knocks with the Dolphins, they used to have a player down there, I believe, it was a wide receiver. I forget his Jarvis Landry.
Right. Okay.
They paid a lot of money for him.
Right.
And he produced okay, but it really hurt the rest of the team as far as their ability to go out and get other guys. So, like I said before, this is a business. So when these guys get drafted in the first round, guys like Clowney, he didn't produce last year.
Right.
Okay, the Texans let him go the year before. O'Brien gets a lot of heat for that, just like he got a lot of heat for DeAndre Hopkins. But I just believe that, when Jadeveon Clowney played last year, he was injured for a long part of the season. They gave him the money. He wants $23 million in that range, and he only had 3 sacks. Well, we're not going to give it to you. But, you see, he can sit out because of where he started when he was in college, being the number 1 overall pick. So he's just going to wait it out, and somebody may give him his money. And this is, really what's going on with a handful of players.
Right.
Very few are able to get that kind of leverage, and they play that game. And, DeAndre Hopkins is doing it, and he got his money. Clowney may get his money. But the rest of these general managers sitting back and going, well, we've kind of known, the first window of what they call the new NFL season, which was 2 days ago.
Right.
The 5 or 6 guys that they really wanted, the teams went out and got them. So you've got some guys sitting on the fence like Clowney and Jameis Winston and the quarterback for the Bengals,
Andy Dalton.
Andy Dalton.
Right.
Yeah. And those guys are, they're going to have to sit back and maybe take some pay cuts or just wait for an opportunity for a guy to get injured.
Well, Clowney.
So, it's nice to see they can do that.
Let me tell you this: Clowney's last senior year at South Carolina wasn't overly that great either. I mean, I think he gained a reputation for being a tenacious hitter, but he was trying to protect himself physically so that he can maintain his value in the NFL draft. So I think O'Brien deciding to cut Clowney loose ahead of time probably wasn't that bad of a move. I have more of a problem with what happened with Hopkins than I do with Clowney, and obviously you saw he was a one and done in Seattle. Let's go into a few more players, Bill, okay? And then I want to go into a few other things that I think are worthwhile. And we'll start here. The Cowboys signed Gerald McCoy with Carolina and Tampa Bay. What are your thoughts about that one?
Well, Gerald is no longer a perennial Pro Bowler, but he's the kind of big name signer Jerry Jones can point to, stop his critics to suggest he's paying himself into a corner with the Cowboys salary cap situation. His pressure rate fell in 2019, and he played in only 63% of the Panthers snaps in Carolina last season. So any impact he makes in Dallas will likely be, in a rotational presence. Okay, so that it's a mediocre pick, but that's a good solid veteran there, and they probably don't have to pay through the nose to get him either.
All right, Brian Bulaga with the Chargers via Green Bay. What are your thoughts about that one, Bill?
Well, Los Angeles doesn't yet know who its quarterback is going to be this fall with the Chargers, but the club's making sure he's going to have some protection. Right. I think Bulaga is one of the best linemen in the league, so they're willing to pay him $10 million annually over 3 years. It could turn out to be a bargain for one of the league's most consistent right tackles. He'll join up with Trey Turner as the newest trusted starters for the Chargers' rebuilt offensive line. So I think that's a great move. Bulaga, there's very rarely are you going to pay a lineman that kind of money, but Bulaga is one of the best tackles in the league.
All right, your thoughts about Joe Flacco?
For Aaron Rodgers for a long time.
Your thoughts about Joe Flacco being released by the Denver Broncos?
Well, there's production and paying too much money. And so, Joe's going to sit back and, probably have to sit back in limbo, sort of like Jameis Winston and stuff. Right. And then we'll see what the draft goes down. And then he's probably going to take a major cut. But he's probably going to come in as a backup. But, he'll be good for a quarterback room. Moving forward, it just depends on what shakes out.
Well, what happened with him was he got the failed physical designation is what he did. That's why he's on the streets. And not like the Broncos did anything when they brought on Jeff Driscoll. I was telling Rudy Reyes earlier today that I wouldn't be doing cartwheels basically over Jeff Driscoll, but in the mountain, in the Mile High City, because he was awful with Detroit. So a couple other players I want to mention, if I may. Ndamukong Suh is still a free agent. He's been doing the NFL Victory Tour lately. He leaves the Lions, goes to Miami, goes to Tampa, and goes to the Rams. Where does he land next?
Interesting. I have no idea on this one.
You don't?
Okay.
Oh, I stumped the Winters. Okay. I don't either.
Going along, well, here's one for us that I really like, and I'm a big fan of this guy. The Bengals signed defensive tackle DJ Reader from the Houston Texans. DJ was a solid free technique for the Texans' offensive line, and a great player. Unfortunately, it was time for him to get paid, and he's a fifth-round pick in 2016. He's gone somewhat under the radar, despite being one of the most dominant nose tackles in the league today. Reader's a great pickup for the Bengals, who have been particularly alive this far in the offseason. He'll be a starter at the center of the line, where he'll be a force for the next several years. And he got a 4-year, $53 million deal, which makes him the highest paid nose tackle in the league, and he's worth every penny. All right, so again, the Texans decided to pass on a guy who's been producing, because they don't want to pay that money. They think there's other players out there that they can get maybe 2 for 1.
But you don't have
So then you've got, teams that got to get up there and win. So they're doing what the Cardinals did. They went out and paid through the nose to get him. So I'm happy for him, but, some teams aren't going to take that philosophy.
All right, but you don't have an answer for Ndamukong Suh, huh, Bill?
No, I don't.
Okay, no problem.
I don't even see him on my board yet. Now, you think what? You mean you asked me why I think he's going to wind up?
Yeah.
I have no idea yet. It's too early to tell.
All right, that's fair. All right, we got a couple other people I want to talk about tonight, Bill. Todd Gurley being released by the Rams, too injury prone, too much money. Rudy and I talked earlier today that I think one good possible spot for him, I think for Todd Gurley, would be the Atlanta Falcons, because he's a former Georgia Bulldog product. And I really, that would be, and we also talked about Tampa Bay and Pittsburgh, but for some reason or another, once Rudy brought up Todd Gurley, then, and I thought Georgia's got to be the place he should go, especially since they let go of Devontae Freeman.
Yes, that seems to make the most sense. They're also a turf team, and Todd's pretty fast on turf. He's a Georgia Bulldog, so he's a good business. They're probably going to do that after the draft, but this is simply a salary dump, and they don't know about his knee,
right?
And they're not going to go ahead and pay him that $7 million roster bonus. So that was just clearing cap space.
And
So,
finally,
it's probably a good reach, Rudy.
yeah,
On that one.
I think so. And finally, let's talk about Sean Payton being diagnosed with the coronavirus. And again, nowadays everybody seems to be, and hopefully that trend doesn't continue. But Sean Payton, the most high-profile NFL guy that has the disease. I have no words to describe this, so go ahead, you can have them.
Well, the NFL is going to be in a conundrum here because, we're talking about all these trades, but right now the NFL is dealing with something they really are got to try to figure out what they're going to do. Is these trades are not going to be, solid and go through until the player actually signs the contract, and nobody's in their offices right now. That's number one. But number two is they got to pass the physical. And what are you going to do? This actually got brought up tonight by one of the experts. What are you going to do if a player tests positive for the coronavirus? Are you going to take away his signing bonus and all of that? So this is one of those stay tuned things. And I think the fact that Sean Payton came out and said he has the coronavirus, okay, the worst is over. He didn't have any symptoms. He just was dragging ass, but he didn't have a temperature and all that. So there's probably going to be a lot of guys that are going to have this, that are going to test positive, and we haven't even gotten to that point yet. So a lot of these deals may wind up being voided based on what the NFL feels they're going to do with this virus. If a player signs a deal and then tests positive for the virus, and they decide they don't want to go in that direction, just prevent them from saving money. So, stay tuned on that one. So that's all I can really say about Sean Payton and the coronavirus. I think it was really courageous of him to come out and do that. I think through the grapevine I hear that he caught it down in Mardi Gras, not at the racetrack that he was down in Arkansas with, over the weekend. So, the reality of it is that stay tuned on that one.
All right, well, I won't stay tuned when I ask you how Bill Winters wants to promote himself. Go ahead, the floor is yours again, Bill. You're on a roll.
Well, you can go to the YouTube channel. Just go to the YouTube search engine and type in Bill Winters Football. You'll see a purple circle. Come up and hit subscribe. You can go to my Wikipedia page, Bill Winters Football, see my body of work. You can go to Facebook by going to facebook.com/BWinters55. And I can also be found on Twitter. If you go to twitter.com/Bill_Winters55, and you will see my Twitter. You'll see my Twitter account.
Okay.
Okay.
Growing by the minute, and it figures to get even bigger. And how else can you find us?
Well, we can find us on our digital newspaper called the South Florida Tribune. If you go to podcast or Apple or iHeartRadio and type in Motormouth, 2 words, and Wild Bill Winters, you'll see our shows, and we'd love for you to grow with us.
Absolutely, and also you can follow my Twitter account. It's got Scoop with 5 3s at the end of it. That's my personal account, or at Tribune South. And Candy, why don't you give our audience some information on how to find these broadcasts?
You can find them on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify. You can find them on Spreaker.com. You can find them on Deezer, any place you find your podcast. Otherwise, you can always go to www.southfloridatribune.com. They're posted on there, as well as many other interesting articles related to either sports or theater reviews. You can find just about anything. So come visit us at www.southfloridatribune.com.
And just a little footnote here, Bill and I will be doing our show on Monday night, not Wednesday, as we're pretty jammed on Wednesday night, bringing back fantasy football. We like to do that periodically during the off season, so Bill is kind enough to go ahead and work with us on Monday night. And we got a lot of good shows coming up over the next week. We have the Real and the Rare with myself and the X-Man Xavier McKnight. Bill and I will be at it on Monday night. Of course, the Sports Exchange on Tuesday. And we have the Sports Exchange on Wednesday night, our special edition with Dave Vilhauer, who, Candy, give him a little bit of an introduction give everybody an introduction about the parenting book.
It's a book that Dave wrote about parents with kids in sports and how you can help mold kids the right way using sports. It's
Right.
a good book.
Yeah, well, look forward to having Dave on, of course, fantasy football, and again, another edition of the Sports Exchange on Thursday. So we have a really busy schedule coming up. Bill, once again, you are our closer tonight, and I really appreciate the in-depth research that you had on all these players. It's pretty hard to keep track of a lot of it, but you were definitely at the top of your game tonight, Bill. So on behalf of all of our guests tonight, leading off with Rick Curdy, following on with David Levin, Candy Ebling, of course, and Bill Winters. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. We want to wish you a great weekend, and please be safe from the coronavirus, and we look forward to the next time. Good night, everybody.
Be safe. Good night, everybody.